Hi, it's DuckFairy07. Today we are playing some Abzan scam. So this is the similar, very similar to list I trophied like a year ago, few times, and now we have this card printed into modern Nissa Resurgent Animist, and it's very good, and it also works great already. You could see it on different versions of Scam, but this is the Abzan version. I like to play a lot. Um, Very much because of this access to this card, the drum is cool. This card makes a deck very toolboxy, and you can find solutions for all kind of problems. And it's also great in finding your elementals and doing the scam in the mid game. And now Nissa Resurgent Animist joins that plan when you also have just another card that can find you the elementals to do a mid game scam. Which can be pretty good. So we have now 4 Eldramis Call, 4 Nissa Resurgent Animist, so a lot of tutors for doing a similar thing, and I think it makes deck very consistent. So you will definitely do the scam with this deck. It's just a matter of time if you'll do it on turn 1, 2, or a bit later in the game. But whenever you do it, it's mostly very good and still can decide the game. Okay, so other than that, what else we are playing? Of course, some removals, 3 prismatic cantings, 2 fatal pushes, 3 Totsis as additional removal. We also have 3 grist here as additional removal, but also value provider and game finisher. Also, it has good synergy with Tarmogoyf. So obviously we're playing 3 Totsis, 4 Grief. We can always go Scam Grief turn 1 and Totsis on turn 2. I think Tarmogoyf is a very good option if we can do this. Of course, often it is Eldrami's tutor target if we want to go aggressive and try to win the game as soon as possible. Okay, so rest of the deck has 1 Endurance as a tutor target for Eldrami's Call. Also, it can be found with Nissa. And 1 Eternal Witness, as it can provide great value in the late game. If you have Ephemerate in the graveyard, you just bring back Ephemerate Witness again, and then start doing the loop. And it will win the long games when you're on in the top deck mode. So that's why I play it. Okay, so on the sideboard, some force figures as artifact enchantment removal, but also there is some creature-based artifact enchantment hate in A Night of Autumn and Collector Ophi. There are 2 more endurances on the side, 1 Eleshnor, which is there to win against similar decks playing elementals. And we have Dranit Magistra there as Cascade hate mostly, temporary lockdown, which hates a lot of deck, but mostly scales and hammer time. Also, there is 2 Orvars, which is very cool because you can find it with Eldrami's Call, but you can also find it with Nissa because it's a changeling. So that's a very cool addition and synergy with this deck. So let's go check some leagues. I just played the league, finished 4-1, was extremely close to the trophy. One wrong decision in the last game decided the match, so you will see it. Okay, so I keep a very risky one lander, but I had the Molecule Rebirth and I had the Grief Undying Evil, plus followed with the Tarmogoyf. My opponent plays the Night's Whisper. I find a second land and go for the Grief. I look at my opponent's hand, discard the Karn, and discard the Fatal Push. So at this point, my opponent had another push and a march, but he exiled push with march to kill the Grief, and then they top decked a Blood Chiefers to kill my Tarmogoyf, which was very lucky for them. They also top decked Karn, the Great Creator, and find the Liquid Metal Coating, and that was just too good. Two good top decks for my opponent for me to win, and I had to concede this one. So let's check out the game 2. Okay, so in the game 2, I kept a slower hand, no grief, no discard, just a fair game. Okay, so I had two Nissas here and Knight of Autumn. My opponent plays the Shadow of Doubt, so in response, at least I get one of my lands. Nothing crazy here, so I just play my Malaki Rebirth, so I can go for turn 3 Knight of Autumn with Godless Shrine, kill the Relic, and then turn 4 go Nissa fetch, find the creature. That was my plan, was definitely try to win with Nissa in this game. But I did draw into Grief, so I decided to just do the Grief thing first, and then when my Nissa is secure, more secure, try to play that. My opponent expectedly had just bunch of lands in hand and one invoke, so I discarded the invoke. I went for the Nissa here. My opponent wasn't able to use the push. So I fetch myself, get 2 mana, and play the Grief immediately. I see my opponent's hand and discard the Domination, leaving them with just a few lands in hand and a Fatal Push, I think. Yeah. Okay, so they decided to go for the push on my upkeep. To kill the Nissa, but I had, of course, another one in my hand, so it didn't matter much. I was able to go for the Nissa again, fetch, play, get a Solitude in hand, and play my Goyf, attack for 3 damage, and find myself in a very good situation here. Goyf is 5-6 now, and I have 11 damage, which means this is a 2-turn clock. So I just pass the turn, leave the Solitude if I need it. My opponent makes my Goyf 1-2 and didn't find another removal, so they concede. That was the game. Okay, so let's check out the game 3. Okay, so yeah, in game 3, my opponent mulliganed to 3 cards and decided not to play the game, so they just conceded. Yeah, I forgot about that, sorry. So let's go check the match 2. So that was match 1. Very My opponent was unlucky in game 3 to mulligan so much, and they just couldn't find a capable hand and conceded. Okay, so this time I had Grief on turn 1 with 2 Ephemerates. So my opponent goes for the Solitude in response, but I have the Ephemerate, so I discard 3 cards from their hand. See their hand, which is just a land at this point. Mm. Again, I do the second Ephemerate. Again, I do Ephemerate, sorry, on my turn to discard the counter spell. I decided not to use this time. I just played my fetch, attack for 3 damage. I really wanted to start attacking. That's why I decided not to use Ephemerate there, but I also knew that they only have one card they drew from the draw step distance, so it was a large chance that they don't have anything really. I go for the Ephemerate in their draw step, so I discard the Prismatic Ending, leaving them with 2 lands in hand. So I didn't use my second Ephemerate Rebound, but I just played the Endurance to resolve it, attack for 3 damage, and now I have a 2-turn clock here. My opponent puts Kahira into hand, I attack for 6, put my opponent on 6 life, play the Goyf and hold the Marquis Rebirth in case they have mass removal or something, and they concede the game. So that was it. Let's check out the game 2. Okay, in the game 2, I kept a fairer hand. Just a Goif, Eldrami's Call, nothing special, but with Eldrami's Call and Ephemerate in hand, I can try to go for a turn 3 Grief, which can be good. My opponent plays Chalice of the Void. I don't care that much about Chalice, but I decide not to go for the Grief, but to go for the Knight of Autumn instead. I try to resolve it. Obviously, I have Nissa in hand. I really want to play it on turn 4. But my opponent has multiple counterspells at this point, so I find another Goif, so I decide it's best chance for me to resolve a spell is to go for the double Goif here. So I go for the double Goif at this point instead of Nissa and resolve both of them, which was pretty good, but they were just 3-4, 4-5 after this prismatic ending. Then I go for the Nissa here. I had to go for the Nissa first before the ending because I wouldn't get the fetch ability. So I went for the prismatic ending, at least on Chalice, after my Nissa got countered. Now I had Ephemerate plus Undying Evil, but my opponent top decked into Teferi to make my cards worthless. So I just exile their Teferi, play my Goif again, but opponent finds another Teferi. So which makes my situation a lot worse. Also now they have Hall of Storm Giants active. And Memory Delusion in their graveyard. And they play Solitude, I play my Solitude, they counter this one, and I decide it's enough. So I decide it's time to concede and go for the game 3. Okay, so in the game 3, now playing first, again didn't have a Skemting on turn 1, but I had a decent hand like Goif, Ending, Nissa, Endurance. All these cards can be pretty good against them. So I just play my Goif here. I attack for 1. I want to just carve the endurance and end of their step. So if endurance is good against blue-white control because it has flash, so you can play it on their end step. It's a good threat 3-4. They counter it, so my Goif becomes bigger, which was good. I then resolve my Grist because they countered endurance end of turn, and yeah, so now I have Nissa, I have Fetch, getting 3 cards into my hand. I play Goif, they bounced. I also keep Ephemerate in case they go for Solitude or whatever. But they just go for another island. I play Teferi, bounce my Goif. I don't really care about this. I still have Nissa on the field. I have Grist doing... Grist is very hard for my opponent deck to deal with. It's killing their planeswalkers, so I didn't get any more fetches, but sometimes one Nissa ability is basically all you need. If you get 2, that's already immense card advantage. Plus it's providing a mana to ramp you. So I went for another grief, but opponent has another counter spell. So now they just use Archmage Charm to chump my Nissa to get a few more turns. I also have a Grist which can deal 4 damage, at least 4 damage on my turn. So I had more than lethal and my opponent concedes. That was a match 2. So let's go, let's check out the match 3. Okay, so in the match 3, had the turn 1 Grief again. It's great when you have these. You rarely lose matches after you do this. And I go for turn 1 ephemerate, discard Ether Vial from my opponent's hand plus Solitude, and my opponent immediately concedes. If they go for the Solitude on turn 1, I would have like ephemerate again, ephemerate anyway, so I would still win. And okay, so my opponent immediately concedes. We can check the game too because they kept a hand only because of Ether Vial. And I boarded in temporary lockdowns, as you can see. Removed one Grist, one Eldramis, one Goyf. Temporary lockdown is pretty good in this matchup. I didn't want to play my Goyf just to get it exiled with the lockdown, so I also holded the Solitude Ephemerate the whole time. My opponent really didn't have much chance here. I just needed to make sure that I find lands with my fetches if they have Leonin Arbiter. So that was my main fear, but I had no problems with it, and I find a third land and go for the temporary lockdown, exiling their whole board. I still had a Goif, a Solitude, Ephemerate, Fatal Push, Eldrami's Call for the next turn, so this was pretty much a one-sided game. At this point, my opponent just equips Lightning Graves on the Stoneforge Mystic. I decide to get rid of this in case my opponent has some surprise. Like Butterskull with haste would be, I don't know, it wouldn't be bad because my hand is too good. But yeah. They had the Sword of Fire Ice. I went for Ephemerate on my Solitude, but they had their Solitude. But this was fine because I had so much cards in hand. Didn't really care. Okay, so I go for the attacks here. Expectedly, opponent tries to equip on their turn. I go for Fatal Push and Response. And now my opponent is on 0 cards in hand, plays Talia. So I just play Goyf as a blocker, even if they equip the sword. And my opponent, okay, finds Sarah Paragon. I have Solitude, but I top decked Ephemerate, which was pretty good top deck here. I will be very good even without the Ephemerate just to kill the Sarah, but yeah, Ephemerate was extra good here, and yeah, it ended the game. Okay, so that was quick games against Death and Texas. We can now watch the games against Giant Creativity. Okay, I kept a very slow hand with just a lot of 3 drops, which is not a very good hand to keep. But yeah, like if you're playing against mid-range deck, it is fine. But this is not a mid-range deck. This is a combo deck, so you got to be doing something early. And this version also plays the Liliana of the Veil and other planeswalkers. It also had one cool tech. I play my Grist. I find my insect token. This way I can like kill their planeswalkers. But my opponent has the Bolt plus the Wrenping to get rid of my Grist, which was very good for them. Uh, I uh, I had a Nissa ability here and find another Nissa, but yeah, I was not in a good position here because opponent had Liliana on 5, so they were able to just minus the Lily to kill my Nissa, and also they got caught, which was interesting tech. It untaps their land, make it a 4/4. It can attack, and also it can give you a lot of mana. So if you play this on turn 4, you minus it and get 4 mana. So you basically this costs 0 mana, and if you minus it for 5, all your lands are mountains, and it has ability to that mountains get the ability to deal 1 damage. So it's a pretty nice additional win condition. After you ulti the cut, basically you really can't lose. Opponent also pluses the Lily here, and yeah, finishes me off with the cut ulti. So that was it. That was game 1 against Creativity. I had to mulligan that first hand. Didn't have a grief here, but I had the Eldrami's call. That can also often be good enough. Okay, so I went for the Triumph here. Play the Heat. So I have multiple options here. Of course, I can go for the Grist on turn 3. I can go for Orvar. But if I go for Orvar, then they know I got it, so they can prolong the game. And I went for the Grief Scam here, discarding Fable and Vrenna 6 from their hand, leaving them with just 5 lands in their hand. And they top deck a third Vrenna 6, which I didn't really care about because this because they had just lands in hand and I was able to kill it next turn. I also had a Solitude in case they went for the Creativity. Okay, my opponent didn't have a solution here and they concede, so let's check out the game 3 against the Giant Creativity. Okay, here I'm very close to having a Grave Scam, but I just need another black card. I have a Eldrami's Call which I can use to find a black card. Also, I find Ephemerate from the top of my deck. So I go for the Fury Scam, a Grave Scam, sorry. I have Ephemerate, so I discard first Terminate, then Fable, leaving my opponent with just 2 lands and Archon in hand. I still have Eldrami's in Cool, which I can use to find Orvar. I do the Rebound on the Grief. Discard Archon from opponent's hand. I don't know if they play Persist, but I didn't see it still. My opponent top decks Fable. I decided not to use the Eldramis. I want to use it. If they go for the Creativity. So I just decide to kill the token so I can hold mana for Eldramis to get Orvar if needed. But also my plan was just to get Nissa with the first Eldramis and then get Orvar with the second. So I went for it. I went for the Nissa. I played the Nissa. I played the Fetch. I try to get the second trigger, but my opponent plays Lightning Bolt. I have Molecular's Rebirth, but they have second Bolt. That was it. But my opponent was on 0 cards, and the only thing I was afraid at this point is my opponent top decking the Creativity, and that's why I fetched the Orvar, put Orvar in my hand. So this way, if they find the Creativity, I have Orvar in my hand, and they're not doing a lot with it, so they need more, or more lands, or more creatures, more targets, whatever. I find Creativity from the top, sorry, Grist from the top, which is very good. I definitely want to put a lot of creatures on the field in case they do resolve the Archon. I wasn't able to use the Grist on this time on Reflection because My opponent played Wheel of Summer, but next turn I go for the Grist. I also have Orvar plus Ephemerate in hand, and my opponent concedes the game. So that was 4-0, and now it was time for trophy match. The last match, 4-0 again. I was thinking a lot about keeping or not keeping this hand. It was pretty bad, but definitely keepable. Nissa, Solitude, Goif, it is a keepable hand. Like one Totsi can make this hand pretty good. So I decided to keep it. My opponent plays the Ragavan, but yeah, needed maybe a second white card to get rid of the Goif. To get rid of the Ragavan, sorry, my opponent kills the Goif, attacks for 5 damage here. I play Nissa here just as a blocker. I have another one to get the ability on the next turn. My opponent unfortunately discards my Solitude, which was my way out for the next turn. I also find Ephemerate, and I stupidly decide to shock here. I was hoping to find a Solitude with Nissa. I was going for that and then doing the Ephemerate, but I didn't really need to shock. So yeah, so that was maybe a misplay here. And now I wasn't able to block all their creatures. Next turn I would have maybe like I would have ability to do the fetch thing again and survive. So definitely a bit fail here, but I don't think it would matter. But yeah, okay. So let's go for the game 2. Okay, I keep this 2-land hand without green mana, but it looks like an okay hand. If I can get 1 land here, I have everything I need to win this. My opponent plays the Ragavan, and I immediately find the land, which was good. My opponent goes for the attacks with the Ragavan here, and I decide not to use the Solitude scam. But yeah, my opponent exiled Goif from my library, played the Goif, yeah, I decided to go for it now. I just wanted to wait end of turn in case they play a second threat. I can get them both out, but yeah, luckily they didn't have a bolt here, so I was able to kill both of their creatures. I went for attack with Solitude here and decided to hold Fatal Push plus Eldrami's Call for their turn. My opponent had a Doughty plus a Fury Scam. I decide to kill the Doughty in the response, so my Solitude doesn't get exiled. They do the Fury Scam. I play Eldrami's Call, find the Solitude, put it in my hand, and I just play Nissa. They have just 1 card in hand, so there is a high chance that my Nissa will survive. I had the land in my hand. It was not a fetch, but still it was good because it allowed me to get a second white mana to play the Solitude. So I was just able to play the Solitude here, get my third basic on field, and start attacking with Nissa. I did get some good top decks in this game. My opponent played the Grief in this situation where I just had a land in hand. But yeah, I was in a lot better situation here. Every fetch here means elemental. So very hard for my opponent to deal with. But I find Solitude on top, which was even better. To just exile the Grief and just continue attacking. My opponent now with the third turn clock, them with just... Uh, 0 cards in hand actually, so I put them on 4 and now they don't have much outs, but they do find a card they need to survive. And they find the Terminate here, which means they're able to kill my Solitude, cast my Solitude because it has Flash, exile one of my creatures and then block another one. I had Malachi's Rebirth in my hand to at least save this one Solitude, but they top deck Bolt 2 immediately. Um, both me and my opponent top decked lands for a few turns, and now I just Eldrami's call for a Nissa, and Nissa really shines in these situations. So I just use my fetches I saved in my hand because of the Nissa. I was hoping to get it, so now I use my fetches to get creatures from my deck, which is Nissa is just so good in this kind of situations, and this is why I played. And my opponent just concedes, so it was time for the last game of the league for the trophy match, and I was really, really, really close to winning here. I had to mulligan to 6, and I keep the 6 cards with just one land. The first hand also had just one land, but this one had double Solitude plus Ephemerate, so I keep it. My opponent goes for the Grief Scam on turn 1, but I use my Solitude. Okay, so I find the second land, which was very good. My opponent only had one land. So this was when I failed with this hand. I was thinking like my opponent is screwed. Don't want to give them a second mana. If I can resolve the grist next turn, the game will probably be over. So I decide to go for the Solitude on the Ragavan here, but my opponent ended up having like playset of Ragavans in their hand. They had just Ragavans. So their hand was full of Ragavans, and I didn't. If I got a third land here, I think this would be over. Yeah, I just needed a third land in this position, and my opponent now finds a Ragavan, and Ragavan exiles my Goif, and it just goes sideways from this point. Still, I can't find a land here. I I discard another Ragavan from their hand and leave. Just not being able to find a third land here means this was game over. Okay, so that was it. That was the entire league. One close call in the last game. If I didn't kill the Ragavan, but if I let them like get the treasure and just find the Tarmogoyf, play the Tarmogoyf, they wouldn't be able to kill it. So they would have to like attack with Ragavan and then Bolt to kill the Goyf. I would still have a second Eldrami's call to find another Goyf, and at this point I would be in a really, really good situation, and my opponent would still be very much stuck on lands. So so okay, yes, I'm not sure. Like maybe that was a bad play, but on the other hand, if my opponent didn't have any more Ragavans in hand, I just needed like third lands to put Grist on field, and Grist on field in that kind of situation would probably mean a very, very hard time for my opponent. But unfortunately, couldn't find a third land. If I had chosen another way, just to go for the Eldramis on the find the Goyf, and then second Eldramis for second Goyf, I think that would be entirely different game. Yeah, but it is what it is. So I missed the trophy. It was very close, but I think I played two leagues with this. Second league also ended up 4-1, and I deck performed really, really well. 8-2 in the two leagues, and I'm really happy with it. I think the Nissa just fits. Also, Nissa is such a good card, and it will be a modern staple, and it's a very good fit for this deck too. It's not Nissa will fit in a lot of decks, and this is definitely one of them. I think the this type of white black scam and the Abzan scam always wanted uh, to have some kind of card advantage engine, and Nissa fits perfectly here. Also, you get Eldrami's Call, Tarmogoyf, Grist, Endurance, Witness, some sideboard cards like Knight of Autumn, Force of Figure. All of these cards are very, very good. in the current modern meta game, and all of these cards are very good reasons to play this deck. And I think it's very well positioned at the moment. It's very good against all aggro decks, and Solitude. Solitude is very good against Murktide, and now you have a Nissa to decide games in those games that end up being going to top deck mode. Then you top deck the Eldrami's Call, find the Nissa, and just win the game. Or Grist does the same thing actually. So these 6 cards are very good, providing you a very good late game, and they're very hard for opponent to deal with. So in a lot of situations, your opponent can kill Nissa, but not after you do the ability. So you often get the value anyway. And also play a lot of ephemerates, undying spells, so to protect her. It's pretty good. Okay, so that is it. I hope you liked the video. Hope you liked the gameplay. If you want to help the channel, click like, click subscribe, comment in the video, and that's it for this time. Goodbye.